Welcome to Synthesize This. In this episode, we're going to be synthesizing a lead sound on the Dave Smith Instruments Pro 2. Let's get started. So as usual, the first thing we want to do is initialize a basic patch. So we're going to go to global, scroll down to 34 and hit right now. So first, some theory. So lead sound is meant for soloing, which usually follows the expression of a singer. So we generally want a sound that evolves over time and that is interesting. But we also want a sound that sits in the mix. So we want it to be both band limited in the frequency domain, but also time limited. What that means is that the release should be short enough so that when you stop soloing, it should cut off quickly so it doesn't interfere with the rest of the song. So in this video, we're going to be doing a very simple, basic lead sound. So let's get started. I'm going to pick a sawtooth as my first oscillator to start off with, which we already have here. And I'm going to initialize a second oscillator, also with a sawtooth. Bring the volume up. This time I'm going to detune it slightly. And I'm going to detune the first one in the opposite direction. So we have this like evolving, phasey kind of sound, which adds character. Another main thing about lead sounds is that you want to play them generally in the higher ranges. So I'm going to bring up my octave transpose. The next thing we're going to do is not related to the sound, but more to the playability. In the miscellaneous parameters, I'm going to set the key assign to last note. So in order to make the sound more interesting over time, we want to change its harmonic content. So there are multiple ways you can change the harmonic content of a sound or its overall timbre. You have tricks like FM, AM. You can change the wave shape of the sound. You can apply filters. Even adding effects like delays and reverbs will alter the characteristics of the sound. In order to make it interesting, we need to modify these parameters over time. So there are two general ways to do that. You can either modify it manually as a performer with things like velocity on the keyboard, aftertouch, the mod wheel, the two ribbon sliders here, or you can allow the synthesizer itself to modify the sound over time with tools like the low frequency oscillator or the LFO, the envelope generators, or the sequencer. So the main thing I like to do first for lead sound is to add a bit of vibrato controlled by aftertouch. Vibrato is basically a change in pitch at a regular interval, but a very low amount. So we're going to use LFO1 and assign all the oscillator frequencies as the destination. And I'm just going to pick an amount that's high for now. So this is exaggerated vibrato, but I'm just going to tweak it to find the frequency. So this is the general amount I like. So I'm going to remember 26. So I'm going to lower the amount on the LFO itself. And I'm going to rely on the aftertouch of the keyboard to bring up that amount up to 26. So I'm going to use this mod matrix parameter here. I'm going to hold assign and keep toggling the keyboard until you see aftertouch. And then as the destination, I'm going to pick LFO 1 amount. So I'm just going to hold destination and tweak the knob. I'm going to make sure this is back down. And then for the amount, I'm going to put 26 as we remembered. So now when I hold the key down stronger, vibrato comes in. So I'm actually going to go back and tweak the tuning we did at the beginning because I find it a little too much. And I'm also going to change the wave of the second oscillator to a pulse. Let's engage the filter because that's another way to alter the harmonics over time. So a really common way to modulate the filter in a performance environment is to assign it to the mod wheel. I'm also going to assign LFO2 to control the cutoff of the filter. Actually, let's also make aftertouch control this parameter as well. Finally, let's move on to the envelope section and see if we can come up with an interesting shape for the filter. I'm going to turn down attack, bring up a release slightly, turn down decay, and bring sustain all the way up. Same thing for the envelope. I want a quick attack, low decay, max sustain, and a tiny bit of release.
It's
Let's add some noise on oscillator 3. And for oscillator 4, I'm going to pick a sine wave, which is going to be very subtle. I'm going to move it up an octave and bring it up just a little bit. As I'm playing, I'm noticing that the aftertouch for the LFO1 amount is a little too aggressive, so I'm going to lower that just a little bit. Because I like to really lean into the keyboard when I want to engage that vibrato. Another really important thing for lead sounds is to have some kind of effects. Delay is preferred over reverb because it's a little more controlled when you're in the context of an overall mix. And thankfully we have 4 delays on this synth, so I'm just going to engage the Bucket Brigade one. Again, the values here are not super precise and they don't have to be synced to anything. You're just sort of adding a little bit of atmosphere. And I'm going to engage the first delay as well. Very subtle amounts. The combination of these reverbs together creates this almost reverb-like atmosphere. Bring up the resonance a little bit on the filter. Let's see what distortion sounds like. That could be interesting. I'm going to assign that to one of the sliders here. And you can latch these to hold a value while you're performing, for example. Again, the idea is just to set up these performance tools so that you can be more expressive as you're playing by engaging more harmonics over time and then decreasing them. Another cool thing to do with lead sounds is to enable glide. So I'm going to turn it on. I'm going to adjust it because by default it's a little high. They set it to 70 here. So in the oscillator sections, I'm going to lower it a little bit, somewhere in the 20s or 30s. When you have stacked oscillators, you can have one of them have a longer glide than the others. And you get this interesting effect where some sounds switch right away while others are still decaying. So I'm going to leave the 4th oscillator, which is my sine wave, to have a high glide. Since my second oscillator is a pulse wave, I'm going to add some pulse width modulation via the 3rd LFO here. So I'm going to select oscillator 2 shape mod as a destination. Let's see what the high pass filter sounds like. This will help us isolate the sound in a mix, because the lead sound generally doesn't have a lot of bass frequencies. And we can combine the low pass and high pass together. Let's assign the fifth envelope to the frequency of the second filter. Cutoff 2, bring up the amount. It gives you a more percussive. That's the other thing to think about when you're synthesizing a lead sound, is you want to put it into context of how it's going to be performed. Another thing that I read somewhere is that the human brain perceives whether they like a sound or the character of a sound in the first 500 milliseconds. So you generally want to aim to have a sound that is interesting and evolving quickly at the beginning to grab people's attention. And then as it sustains, you want it to evolve with time harmonically to keep it interesting. So tricks like this, applying in the envelope, creates this initial bursts of harmonic transition which captivates you initially. For the sustain part, what I prefer to do personally is to rely on performance tools rather than on automated tools. So things like the mod wheel and aftertouch and even velocity, which I haven't even assigned here, are great tools for that. Alright, so now that we've synthesized the basic lead sound, let's see what it sounds like in the context of some music.